Joining me now, Democratic strategist Fred Hicks and former Homeland Security Advisor Charles Marino. Gentlemen, good morning. Fred, the border, we know this, big for voters. Are concerned about this, especially in Arizona, where Harris and Trump are neck and neck in these latest polls. Trump is expected to be in the state Friday. What message do you expect Trump to push, given Harris's gains, the momentum that she's seeing this week?
I think we can expect the former president to try to paint Kamala Harris as the border czar, a term that she has never adopted and never used to describe herself. I think he's also going to try to paint her as someone who has not been really about any kind of action. And I think the new line that Republicans have used over the last week or so is one that we'll see here, and that is that she's in office, so if she wanted to do something about it, she should do something about it. She could do something about it. Again, that's going to ignore, I think, a lot of the realities, including the major one that the Republicans shuttered a plan earlier this year that would have resulted in, addressing this issue. But I think those are the things we can expect former President Trump to say.
Charles, let's say Harris wins come November. If she's elected, what does she need to do to address the border?
Enforce the law on the books. They're already well established. Unfortunately, the vice president is pretty well stated in this area as part of the Biden administration, and that is the vice president does not believe that illegal immigration should be treated as a crime. She's also, as part of the administration, proven not to use the resources like CBP and ICE for law enforcement purposes, but instead for processing. And they've also proven that they are willing to exploit legal pathways into the country. This is a big problem. And I can tell you one additional thing that hurt last night was having former President Obama speak about this issue. Former President Obama, as I outline in my book very meticulously, was considered to be a border hawk with 450,000 deportations a year. He earned the nickname as the deporter-in-chief by immigration advocacy groups and had secretaries of Homeland Security like Janet Napolitano, a former border governor, and Jay Johnson, who went on record and said anything over 1,000 encounters a day at the southwest border was considered a crisis. So it's a tough record to get away from across the board in the Democratic Party.
But Charles, let me stick with you for a second. As we look at the numbers, border crossings are at historic lows based on July. So it seems to be working, whether it's the Biden administration, of course, the Biden-Harris administration.
Well, the question is, are they really down, or have they been shifted as part of the shell game that the Biden administration has been playing all along for the past 3.5 years? We know that they've had to stop the CHNV parole program because of extensive fraud. That was circumventing the numbers in between the ports of entry. We know they're still utilizing the CBP One app. We know that they're extending the guidelines for asylum and other parole claims.
Okay.
So the real question is, are they really down, Hannah?
So, Fred, how should Harris address the border in her DNC speech tomorrow?
Well, I think if you're number one, I think she should talk about the fact that the border crossings are down. Now, it's a fairly typical Republican tactic to question the numbers, whether we're talking about votes or apparently now border crossings. But the reality is that the numbers are what they are. I think we're also starting to see the vice president address this in her commercials and talking about how aggressive she has been on the matter of immigration, but immigration with a human touch. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. One of the other things that she's really been working on and talking about is this idea that we need to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Again, this was all things that were covered and addressed in the legislation that was passed, the bipartisan legislation that was passed and supported until former President Trump made his calls to leaders in the Senate and asked them to tank the legislation. So the one thing I would say, and I hope that she reminds voters and people and viewers, whether they are Democrats or not, is that Democrats have tried to make movement on this issue, and that Republicans have blocked it. The other thing is that her pathway to citizenship that she supports is very similar to that former President Bush supported, and is in line with what Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s. So this is not, oh, Biden Harris, they're terrible and they've ignored the border. This is that Biden Harris have actually made attempts to work on this and have had to take executive action, but that Republicans have not been good faith partners.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.